Hello, it's Renata with Renata's Garden, and it's time for another episode of Unearth Horticulture. Today's episode is about the Araceae plant family, otherwise known as the Arums or Aroids. Stay tuned for more information on your favorite houseplant family. What makes an Aroid, or a member of the Araceae plant family? Well, it really all boils down to the flower. And in the taxonomical world, all plants are currently classified by their flower structure and the similarities there. And so the Aroid family actually has a very unique and interesting flower shape called the spadix flower, inflorescence, if you like. And basically what that means is it has a spathe, a showy leaf-like structure that's sometimes a different color than its leaves. And then it also has the spadix, or also known as the nose. And these plants all have this flower structure, whether they flower often or not. So anthuriums have a showier flower structure, and they've been bred to flower pretty consistently, whereas plants like Monstera or Alocasia, or elephant's ears, these plants are really cherished for their foliage and their unique leaf shape rather than their flowers. And if you do see these plants flowering, it's usually a sign of stress. So that's not a good sign. But if you ever do have the opportunity to see your Aroid flower, it will have this spadix flower shape. While the flower is the main identifying feature of any plant, determining whether it is taxonomically in the Araceae family, there are many other features that are mirrored across species in this family. For example, all of the leaves have almost a similar leaf shape that's kind of arrowhead-like, and the leaves come to a point at the tip and often have lobed or a flat base to the leaf. They also have what's called a stipule at the leaf attachment to the stem, and these stipules can be either fused to the petioles, like in a pothos plant's case, or they might be free in a philodendron's case. So all in all, there are different ways you can determine if a plant is in the Araceae family without the flower. What makes Aroids so collectible and so sought after in the houseplant world? They really meet several of the criteria that make for a great houseplant. Number one is they fall into the category of understory tropical plants, which means that they grow underneath the canopy of trees and often are epiphytic or hemiepiphytic, which means that they root quite readily. And since they're understory plants, they can deal with lower light levels, such as the light levels we have in our interiors, pretty nicely. Another criteria that is honestly more important than whether they'll survive in our homes is how interesting these plants are. And the Aroid group has quite a few interesting character traits that show up in different species. For example, this Monstera here is doing what is known as fenestrating. And fenestration is basically a word in the botanical world for openings in the leaves. And these plants naturally, with higher light levels, split their leaves, and that's where they get their common name, Swiss cheese plant. But there's also a few other plants that do that in the Aroid family, including this Rhaphidophora, or dragon tail plant right here. And it's pretty young, but you can see that its top leaf is starting to split. And it's really fun to grow plants that fenestrate because they change over time and they adapt to their environments. You can see the light taking effect in their physiological makeup, which is a really cool, nerdy plant thing to see. Another feature that pops up in the Aroid family is leaf color. And a lot of you may have heard of the notorious pink princess philodendron. And yes, that is in the Aroid family. And I have a similar hybrid. It is not the pink princess, but it is called Red Sun, and it has beautiful ombre leaves. As they mature, they turn to a lighter green, but the younger leaves have this really bright, dark red color. And they're really beautiful to watch. Another feature that makes them really fun to keep is that they're easily propagated. Because many of them are epiphytic, they have what's called root initials that are right on the stem. This is a pothos, and that root initial is easily triggered to start rooting. So you can cut it off the plant, stick it in a jar of water or into moist soil, and it will take off in as little as a week. So their good ability to propagate is another feature that makes them really fun. Another example is in this anthurium is that they pup readily. And pupping is basically when they form clone plants or baby plantlets, versions of themselves at the base of the plant and keep reproducing that way. That makes them easily dividable, and you can share them with all your friends that way. Overall, the Aroid family just has so many different unique traits and characteristics that make them, make each species unique. And that is what makes them so highly sought after. All right, so here I have a popular member of the Aroid family. This is an elephant's ear, or Araceae poly is its cultivar name, and it's become quite popular. And we've been growing it in a plant macrame hanger here. But if you look closely, I will show you a close-up. I have two separate individual plants here, a pup and the mother plant. And the original plant has started to flower. It has a terminal flower, which in this specific plant's case means that that pup is about to die. And you can see this kind of dead leaf hanging off to the side. Now this can happen if the plant's stressed out, if it's old, if you've had it for a while, chances are that it might just decide to be, all right, I'm done with life. But the good news here is that we have a pup or a new plant that can support itself, that can be divided off of the mother plant. So that's what I'm going to do here in this video. The first trick is to get this guy out of its macrame hanger. All right, so you can see here I've gotten the plant out, and I'm going to go ahead and remove it from its pot and start slowly working and dividing these plants apart. All right, so you can see that I kind of tried to break apart so that this root mass, it doesn't look very big here, but I wanted to break more of these roots than the plant that I'm going to keep. So I was more aggressive to get these roots, but there's still some roots attached. This plant is, it had a little bit more life maybe to it, but it's pretty much done. So I'm going to go ahead and discard this part of the plant and repot the remaining pup. What's interesting about Araceae is that they're actually a geophyte, and what that means is that they have storage structures underground that keep hold of water and nutrients and things that the plant may need to call on later when resources are more limited. So you might come across that in the root zone when you're repotting this or dividing it. It's really interesting to see. Take a look. All right, so now that I've kind of divided its roots up, it's looking pretty loose and ready to expand into its container again, I literally am going to take the same soil because it was repotted pretty recently, and I'm going to repot into this and maybe add a bit more fresh soil. But you may want to freshen up your soil at this point when you're repotting. So I'm going to do that next. All right, as you can see, this guy is a little bit wobbly in here, but it's better not to compact the soil too much, so we want to allow the roots to breathe. You might consider staking it with a totem pole or just a plain wooden stake. I think this one will be just fine. I'm going to put him back in his macrame hanger and put him over in the little corner where it's a little bit more sunny, and those roots should fill out pretty quickly. Make sure when you divide never to bury the plant too deeply, because if you bury this part, it could lead to crown rot and the death of your plant. That's all I have for you today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. I'm always happy to answer plant questions or anything horticultural related. In the meantime, stay tuned for next week's episode of Unearth Horticulture.